What's up, everybody, and welcome to the No BS Real Estate Show, a podcast that gives you an inside look on how to make smart financial decisions while adding value to your life. I'm Matty Miller with ERA Real Estate, alongside my co-host and real estate investor extraordinaire, Ryan Robbins. Whether you're a long-time investor or a first-time buyer, join us as we dig through the everyday bullshit of real estate.
Seconds.
That's because you're live now. That is a long 15
That's
seconds.
Good timing. Very good timing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the No BS Real Estate Show. I am Matty Miller, your host, I suppose. Hostess with the mostest, or hostess with the hair, however you want to put it that way. Whatever. Ryan Robbins over here to my left, or for you people, it's right. The other person, the other voice that you're hearing. Anyway, we're here today to talk about red flags for bad tenants. So if you're an investor and you are self-managing, or if you're a property manager and you're placing tenants, or if you just happen to have one home and you're going to put some tenants in there, some things to avoid and kind of some red flags that will really help you look out for those things that you really only find is if you've placed a lot of tenants, i.e. this guy placed a lot of tenants, made some mistakes, placed some bad ones, placed a lot of really good ones, but have placed some bad ones as well. So kind of going through that, but we do apologize. We'll keep housekeeping in here. Hurricane, we're all good. No one got hurt. No damage. I think very little damage around Jacksonville as a whole. I don't know. I've
been telling people it's like we've got worse afternoon thunderstorm sprawls we got from the hurricane.
This was pretty bad. I mean, pretty poor as far as the damage was considered, which I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that there was really nothing that happened. We got maybe 45, 50 mile an hour winds, a few gusts here and there that might have, rattled the trees a little bit, got all your dead branches out of there that fell on the ground, and then we moved on. So I had one issue property management wise, and it wasn't necessarily – it had actually been an ongoing issue that we have to fix now because –
wasn't handled before?
Well, the sideways rain made a window leak.
Okay.
And who knows? It could have been like that for a while, but it was just happened to be the fact that the rain was actually going sideways at the right angle, probably made it more apparent. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much all I had, which, if you're a property manager out there or a realtor who manages property, which is all one and the same, hurricanes, the worst thing you will ever go through. If you're managing rental property at all, it's just absolutely awful. Tenants typically freak out, lose their minds, and blame you for everything. And they want it fixed yesterday. And the problem with that is they don't understand that every contractor and every handyman and every mold remediation and every person that you can think of that's possibly could be working on that problem has a list of 154 of those same issues. So it doesn't get fixed fast. It never does. It never will. And it's just the unfortunate part of it. So people have to be patient. And what I tell people is, help us help you. So if it's, don't call me to help clean up your yard after a hurricane. Just do it because I can't get anybody out there to do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's no.
And you got to be aware that most things are going to have a Band-Aid for a bit. Like you got a leaky roof. Well, it's going to have a tarp until the roof guy can get out there.
Yeah, which might be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And by the way, in those 3 weeks, it's still hurricane season. You could get another one and a shitload of rain. So prepare to be uncomfortable at times. It's one of those things. So,
and that's probably just in general. It's like you're a tenant, but your homeowners are going through the same thing. It's not like people are getting, I would say what probably we see the most is that tenants feel like they're neglected when it's like, everybody's waiting the same time. It doesn't matter whether you're renting or you own. There's no roofer that's giving priority over one or the other.
No, because the money is all the same. It doesn't matter. So it is what it is. So
exactly.
Anyway, so yeah, we had kind of asked about topics and tried to come up with stuff. And I think one thing we hadn't talked to is really about placing tenants. And as we go through the 2019 version of placing tenants in rental properties. And what I mean by that is just kind of how technology's changed the way we operate. And, you have self showings versus in-person showings. And we'll get to that, what I mentioned yesterday. So we'll get there, where I'm actually changing my tune on self showings a little bit. And we're going to give it a shot here. So just for the sake of a couple different reasons, just number one, just time efficiency and having a plan in place to figure out how to place tenants without actually driving all over town to meet everybody. So at the same time, I want to keep the integrity of actually placing the right tenant and having conversations with them up front. So having a plan to do that. Most importantly, the professional tenant. And when I say the professional tenant, there are tenants out there that literally prey on bad property owners. They will lie to you. They will try to hide things from you. They will look so good on paper, or it's not even so much on paper. A lot of times it's the emotional that comes in to effect. And that's kind of what I'm trying to avoid. I recently made a mistake. It was I don't know if it was a mistake. It was a really poor house that I'm no longer managing. But I probably should have cut the property before I placed a bad tenant, and the bad tenant cost me time and effort on the bad property. So it was all around a bad situation. So as some would call it, the cycle of suck. If you have bad properties, you have bad tenants, you're gonna kill yourself. That's what's gonna happen. Okay, you're gonna take years off your life. You're gonna take years off your life, and you're gonna hate property management. That's basically what I'm saying. So I probably should have just cut the property, but it is what it is. So, but there were definitely signs that I ignored because I needed to place a tenant in this property, and we're going to talk about those signs. So, signs of bad tenants. Number one, my first disqualifier. Do you know what it is? Do you have a guess?
I'm just going to go with a typical what's coming up on the screening: credit score, low credit score.
You can go before that though, because here's my deal. And this is if you're showing someone. So if you're an investor and you schedule an appointment, you make a post on Craigslist or whatever for this property. And the first thing what they do is if they respond via email, okay, via email, text message, whatever. Do you misspell stuff? Do you capitalize crap? It's so simple. But if they're trying to make a good impression, every tenant in the world is trying to make a good impression on a property owner. And if they don't even take the time to do that, and it's so simple. This is nitpicky stuff, and I'm not going to give you we're going to get to credit reports and all that fun stuff too.
Well, it's funny you bring this up because this goes hand in hand with, we haven't compared lister, it goes hand in hand with something I had put down, which I put incomplete application.
Oh, that's an automatic.
And I'm comparing this to right now hiring some maintenance guys along with some people on the real estate side, and put very clear instructions and questions on the ad for employment. And it's like, you send in a resume and you don't complete or answer the questions that were asked. That's like an immediate, like, you couldn't even take the extra 5 minutes to just fill out what's already there. That's red flag number one.
If you can't complete our application, which you've seen, it's on our website.
Yeah.
It takes 6 minutes. Yep. Maybe. If you can't complete our application, man, you're really, really trying to not rent a property. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. So capitalization in how you communicate back and forth with that person, to me, is huge. If you address me as, hey, bro, or whatever, as a first time, I will respond to people that they say, hey, bro, or whatever, because I kind of have that just – it's what I use anyway. I like to be friends with people, and I want to make sure they're comfortable. And sometimes that puts people at ease because I'm not there as a property manager to be an asshole all the time, but I do want to help you out, but at the same time, treat me with the professional respect that I deserve, and likewise to them. And I'll do the same back. So capitalization, like I have people that, hey, Mr. Miller, I like to look at this property today. When can you meet me? And that's what it says, but it's all one sentence. There's no periods. There's no capitalizations. And maybe they don't even address me as Mr. Miller. They maybe say, hi, sir. Like, okay. Yeah. So the only exception to that is, honestly, when I get like a text message or an email like that, and I'll kind of backtrack a little bit. If I have somebody who's a non-English speaking, so English is not their first language. So sometimes that's the case. And what I'll do in that situation is I'll actually go to Google Translate, and that's where I'll keep that conversation in a text message or an email, and I'll actually type my answer out in English, send it back in our case, Spanish most of the time, send it back to them, and then they can communicate with me via Spanish, and I can translate it back. So in that situation, sometimes.
What do you do with a non-tech savvy grandma or grandpa? Does Google Translate have an elder?
Honestly, yeah, I don't have very many of those, but what I do with those people is I'll just get on the phone with them. Yeah, sort of simple answer. And those people typically aren't even going to try to reach out via text. They're going to call you anyway. Or they're going to leave a message with our office secretary and say, hey, Matt, can you call this guy back? Sure, I can. Number 2 on my list, or actually, let's go to your number 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, so mine, which I'm going to kind of piggyback off of an employment style of reviewing a tenant, but would be references. And it's probably something that I know when I listed my first property as a self-managing landlord, I didn't do a bunch of follow-up when it came to calling references. And I'm sure property managers and other, self-landlords out there don't do it.
Sure.
Landlord references, not only making sure that they have them, but actually physically taking the time to call them. So,
actually doing it. So I was actually guilty of that myself when I first started. Our application actually always asked for a reference for your work, 2 personal references, and a landlord reference. So it asked for 4. Very rarely do I ever call the personal references because a lot of times it's your mom or your aunt, and they're gonna say whatever they're gonna say. So it's kind of pointless. What I do, and what I have gotten into a point of doing, is making sure that I do call work, especially if something seems off. I don't always call work. The most important one for me that I can get a hold of is previous landlord. And I'd like to have 2 previous landlords. So I'm actually going to change my application, which actually is a reminder to myself. I can kind of detail some things and get 2 previous landlords. I can get your current one and I can get a previous one. So I can get 2. So that to me is probably more valuable than even the work one. A lot of times if they shoot me over pay stubs and it's from the legit corporation that they put on their application, I'm probably not going to question it.
Yeah.
And honestly, what am I going to do? Call and say, hey, are they a good employee? Yeah. If it's a small company, I might be able to get to somebody, but if I'm going to call into some HR company, there's no way I'm going to get in. It's a waste of my time. So if they're working for Bank of America, or I'm trying to think of, they're working for Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Florida, which has 5,000 employees over there. There's not a chance that I'm going to get anybody that as a direct supervisor to them.
Yeah.
To get a call back. It's just not going to happen. So
with it, I guess, what are a few questions you'd be asking landlord references? So I had written down, was the entire rent refunded?
Funny you should ask.
If it wasn't refunded, why?
Let's pull up my handy dandy reference sheet that I send to rental verification request. I'll even share this on screen number 2. Share. So you can see it. So this was my most, I'm going to get rid of this name here. Not that anybody's going to matter, but either way. So I'll have them sign it via dot loop. And what I'm really asking for is property or landlord name. And that's the name of the company they rented for. How much was their rent amount? How long did they live there? Number of late payments. Do they have any return checks? Any documented complaints? In other words, did you have a complaint that somebody was, loud music or whatever the situation may be? Any kind of complaint. Cleanliness.
Now you're sending this to the landlord?
I'm sending this to the landlord, correct.
Okay.
So I'm sending this to the prior landlord. Was the applicant asked to move? If no, do they give proper notice? Was he in less than good condition? Sometimes they don't know because they haven't actually moved yet.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes, they can put NA on that. If no, please explain damages and cleaning needed. Did they leave owing any money? How much was it? Would you rent to this applicant again? The most important question to me is probably that one. Would you rent to this applicant again? Honestly, if I were to send over 3 questions, I would send over how much was the rent? Were they ever late? And would you rent to this applicant again? That's all I would really need to know.
So I had down, was the entire deposit refunded?
Yep.
I had, were they ever late on payments? Did they terminate the lease early? Was there any complaints from the neighbors? Was the property maintained? And I think that's it. Yeah, that's all I had down.
Yeah. So pretty simple, 5-6 questions. This is a little more lengthy in detail, but like I said, it does hit all the main questions that we need.
Now, here's one to piggyback up. You got a mower going or what?
Yeah, apparently these guys are out here mowing this morning.
Convenient timing.
No.
So how, because like anything else in this day and age, hey, I'm going to put a buddy down. I'm going to put, maybe my uncle down to answer when you call the landlord. So what questions could you ask? Because if you send a sheet over, they could fill out the sheet and send it back to you, or their friend could, or their mother could, whoever that may be. What questions, if you get a previous landlord on the phone, can you do to spot potentially a fake reference?
Well, number one, there's 2 things. So number one is if you're going to an apartment complex, you're going to ask for who the property manager is at the apartment complex. That's pretty simple to where they're not going to be able to fake that because you can pull apartment complex and pull staff typically and see if they're, or if it's at cmcresidential.com or whatever the apartment, whoever manages the apartment, they're going to have an email address or a fax number. If they ask for an email and it's so-and-so@gmail.com, that's who I got to send this sheet to.
Yeah.
The first thing I'm going to do, if that person's name, I'm going to pull the tax roll. And if that person's name doesn't match up with that person, I'm going to question it.
Yeah.
And the instant that I have to question it and you stumble over your words, deuces, get out of here. Okay. So you're lying to me.
I'm going to hit you with a few.
If they're lying to me about your application, where are we going there?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. So I had written down a few that I had done and looked up yesterday. So one was, to your point, you just mentioned it, pulling them up on the tax roll, asking them to verify the address. If I give you the name of somebody, unless you have a million, properties and they've rented from you recently, odds are you're going to know what property they were in. Or even if you manage 1,000 properties, you could probably pull them up on a, whatever system you're using and give them the property address, as opposed to asking, hey, was Susan at 123 Main Street? Hey, what property did Susan rent from you? What their monthly rent was. Again, just verifying what the tenant had put on the application, saying, hey, yeah, I paid $1,000. They're verifying they were paying $1,000. The other one, this one had kind of, be interesting to do, but act like you're looking to rent a property. So don't call them up asking about the tenant, call them up, about renting a property and see how they act. Because obviously if they're not expecting a call and they don't have any properties for rent, well, that's going to
and if I do that, like I said, and I would do that if I knew that someone was almost fake.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I've had it happen like twice and I just told the tenant like, yeah, this isn't legit. So
the other thing you could do, which you can kind of do just in general on calling people out, but is give false information or inaccurate information.
The funny part is a lot of times I don't ever get to that point in the process because
you've weaned them out prior to that.
Yeah. A, yes. And B, typically that's after the credit check. So, and that's after the credit checks and that's after they've already sent me all their documents. So the references for me are the final check.
Yeah.
Basically, they're the last thing that I'm going to do. And that's just verifying everything else. And I don't get to that point very often because I've already weeded them out typically. So my other one on my list that's huge especially for you guys that are do-it-yourselfers or whatever, is if you're renting a property and you plan to meet Ryan. My name's Matt. I have a property over on University Boulevard. here in Jacksonville, and I tell Ryan, hey, Ryan, meet me over there at 3 o'clock today. And I'll give you about a 5-minute buffer. But the instant that you show up anytime about 10 minutes afterwards and don't text me or call me and say, hey, I'm running late because of traffic. Number one, that happens. Okay, but if you show up and I got to call you to remind you or shoot you a text and say, hey, I'm here 5 minutes after you were supposed to be there, I'm not renting to you. Bottom line. Because lateness just shows me that your punctuality is terrible. So if you're willing to be late to view your home, you're probably willing to be late on your rent. You're probably willing to be late responding to information that I need to get to you as a tenant. You're probably willing to be late reporting information on the home that you need to get to me. So if your punctuality sucks, that's the first one. I'm actually in a situation with a girl who is in an apartment right now, and she showed up 10 minutes early to her appointment. She beat me there. She's a single mom. Her income's a little bit low, to be perfectly honest with you. But she got her application in an hour after I left the appointment. She got her docs over to me the same day. Okay. I asked for a co-signer. She had her dad fill out her information the next day, the next morning. And I got her dad's docs within 24 hours. And I'm like, and I was a little bit weary because just of the way her situation seemed desperate almost.
Yeah.
But I've made her wait. I've made her go through all the proper channels, and she's been fantastic. So,
and speaking of feeling desperate or coming off as being desperate, one of the things I'd written down was, immediate move-in.
Oh God, no. Yep.
So,
nope. As soon as possible. Yeah, that's not going to work for me. The only situation that I'll have that work in is if I call, like if they come up and say to me, hey, I had a place, it fell apart, something happened with the property, I don't know what happened. My lease is up in 10 days and I do need a place. Like I had a place secured.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to do is call whoever the previous landlord is, verify that story with him or her and see, hey, we've been there for 5 years. We're trying to upgrade, whatever, yada, yada, yada. So all sorts of things. Like you can verify those stories when they come in. But if they're like, oh, I need a place as soon as possible, typically they're telling me they're getting evicted. Okay. Which you can always pull Liz pendants on the current property address. So you can pull that stuff if you really need to, which I do before. I have before quite a few times. Yeah. So that was the other thing I was talking about, lateness. And I was also I had timeless of docs. So how quickly you get over the documentation that I ask for to me also says a lot about your character as well. So if it's important to you and it's important for you to rent that property, if I ask for a copy of your social, your driver's license, your pay stubs, all those things, your taxes or your child support or whatever it is, your SSI letter, any of those things that come into play. If you get that stuff over to me rather quickly, I know you're pretty serious. I know you probably have your shit together a little bit. Because the last thing I want is a tenant that doesn't have their shit together. And there's a lot of them that don't. And there's a lot of them that do too. So that's the other side. So
that's what I was going to say. That's where property managers get to play detective and self-managing landlords. So I've got a couple ones I'm going to hit you with quick. And again, most of these, because I haven't lived through them, I looked up. So I actually got hit with this the first time, but pay a large portion of rent up front. So you had kind of given me a fair warning where, hey, somebody wants to pay, 5 or 6 months. Well, why do they want to pay 5 or 6 months when you only have to pay a month? That happened to me on my first tenant. They paid 4 months up front, and miraculously they moved out on month 3 for whatever reason. But you had called it out. Here I'm like, first time renting a property.
Sounds great.
Sounds like a home run to me. And sure enough, 3 months later, it was back on the market. So I ended up with an extra month's worth of rent. But
I mean, it worked out okay.
That was probably one of the few occasions it's going to work out.
But it took more legwork on your end to secure the next tenant.
Correct. It did.
To where if you would have placed a tenant the first time around, they might have still been there.
Correct.
You have no idea. So what I always tell people is, listen, I understand that you're ultimately going to have to pay rent. I also understand that you're ultimately going to have to buy groceries and eat. But when you go to the grocery store, do you offer to pay the grocery store 4 months in advance for your groceries? No, you would never do that. No one would ever do that. So something's clearly wrong if someone wants to go do that.
Yeah.
Your lettuce is going to be spoiled, clearly. Okay. I mean, you're going to have mold all over your oranges in 3 months. It's just whatever it is. So, yeah, typically those people are trying to hide something, or they ran into a large portion of cash illegally, and they want to get rid of it. So also it's money laundering. So there's that. The other side of that is, to that point is, and you may have this on your list, is cash. Do you accept cash as a landlord? We do not. And I'll tell you my story on why not. A few years ago, I had a tenant. Everything on the surface looked fantastic from what I knew. And it was a family. They had 2 kids. They actually had a babysitter at their house pretty much all the time because they owned an auto shop here in town, and owned the auto shop, and they both worked there. She did the books. He was the lead mechanic and had probably 3 or 4 other guys. And this was a legit operation. This was not a small auto shop. This was they probably serviced, 20, 30 vehicles a day. They had 4 or 5 mechanics, probably a couple other guys that worked around the shop, and 2 ladies in the office full time. So it was, 10 people total. It's a legit size operation. So anyway, 1 month he became late. Always seemed like a good guy, very nice people. Always never had any issues with coming into the office and, drop off his check and move on from there. And then 1 month I noticed that I didn't really get on my radar for a while, but 1 month I noticed he came in, he was late, and then all of a sudden he was late every month. Every month. For about 4 or 5 months there, he was becoming late, and he started to come in and pay in cash. And I'm talking $20 bills. So he would come in and lay down, and they're paying $1,500 a month to rent this. So $1,500 in $20 bills that's quite a bit. It's a wad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just like, oh, here's my whatever. Some other times he'd come in $100 bills. Moral of the story, and this is my own stupidity, and we all, you don't know what you don't know, right? Moral of the story is, we end up 1 month he just doesn't come in, and I can't get a hold of him anymore, and just kind of nothing. And I'm like, all right, well, now I got to go to this house. I got to serve a notice. I got to do this. I got to let the owner know that we may have to do an eviction, yada, yada, yada. So we ended up we didn't even have to do the eviction, because come to find out, they had vacated the property. The electric was off for 30 days, which in the state of Florida, if you can prove that someone's not there for 30 days, it automatically becomes possession of the landlord again. Okay. Little tidbit for you. So if you didn't know that. So anyway, so we proved that. So I have a couple JSO officers who are friends of mine. So I called one and said, hey, do you mind on your off-duty work? I'll pay you, $50 or $100 or whatever it is to come with me to this property. We've deemed it to be abandoned. And here's our proof. We called JEA. JEA's been off in their name for 33 days or whatever. So we went up there and walked through it, and there was still a bunch of stuff left. I'm talking belongings, photo albums, anything you can think of, just all there. Their main furniture is gone. So most of their main, their beds, their couches, there was a couple couches left. We ended up finding two loaded handguns with serial number scratched off. We ended up finding they were cooking drugs in the master bathroom. Not meth, so it didn't smell. It was probably heroin or something like that. Is what they told me. It was heroin. So a non-smelling cooking type. But there was obviously syringes. There was different kinds of shit we found all over the property.
Good shit. Did you get to test it out?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh.
I like my beer, so I'll stick with that. So we went in there, and we had to pay a dumpster company and a couple other guys to go in and unload the house, about $3,000 to get everything back to normal. Probably was about $7,000. And moral of the story is, if somebody comes in and you pays with cash and they're paying late, question where that money's coming from, because in 2019, people don't walk around with $3,000 cash on them that are normal.
Yeah.
Normal people don't walk around with that much cash. The most cash I ever have on me, I don't know, a couple $100. And that's probably because I'm going to like a concert or a football game.
If I have a couple $100 on me, it doesn't last very long because I'm spending it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm spending it that night typically. Yeah. Like I'm going directly to the ATM to grab a couple $100 because taking my card into an event and scanning it every time, and I'm probably going to be inebriated, so I don't want to lose that. So if I lose $20 cash, it's not the end of the world. But and I probably won't do that either. But at the same time, you get my point. So if you get cash in your office or that person's dropping off cash, if they say they don't have a bank account, you tell them to get one. Okay. Or you're not going to rent to them, or you're going to, whatever. So it's one of those things where that was kind of me learning the hard way. And that's why we don't accept cash anymore.
Aside from the fact that nowadays tenants can be paying online or through an app.
Oh yeah. And that's
everybody's life easier.
Sure. And I still have tenants who don't pay online because they don't actually have a bank account. So what I tell them to do is you take your cash, you take it down to Publix, you take it down to wherever. I said, and you get money orders and you bring those to my office.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there are still people in this world that don't have a bank account. I don't know why. I don't know what the reason for it is, but they don't have one. So it is what it is. But okay, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Last one for you. Casual liars make bad tenants.
Well, no shit.
And what I mean by that is, again, catching people, but smelling smoke on somebody and you're showing them a property that's non-smoking, or somebody shows up covered in pet hair and there's a no pet policy and they're saying they don't have pets. So keeping an eye out for little things like that. I'm sure you see it all the time. That's kind of one of those unspoken bad grammar type of deals. But, different side of that, again, casual liars, bad tenant.
With the smoking, it's kind of ironic because the fact that all of our houses are non-smoking. And I tell them, listen, I said, I don't care. I don't even care what you smoke. I don't care if I don't really give a shit if it's marijuana, to be honest with you. I said, well, it's going to be legal here in the next 2 years in this state anyway. The Florida prosecutors already come out and said that they're not even charging people with marijuana. They're dropping all the charges of marijuana on residents of Florida anyway, if you already have a pending one. So that's a whole deeper issue for some people, I think. I think some of the older crowd, I said, listen, I don't care if you do it, but go outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Go outside. I don't care if you do it, but go outside. In the same with, because honestly, if you've ever been around it or you've had a tenant that has smoked weed in your house, marijuana smell doesn't stick around. Cigarette smoke gets into walls.
Yeah.
Okay. Cigarette smoke is way worse than any marijuana can ever be, minus the fact that marijuana is illegal. Okay. But that being said, it's one of those things. There was at one point in time in this country that drinking a beer was illegal too. So we'll go from there. Right. That being said, if somebody shows up and smokes, listen, smoke outside. But I'm in your property every 90 days anyway. If you're smoking in there, I'm going to find
You're going to know. Yeah.
I'm going to know. So the pet thing, same type of thing. You can't really hide a pet.
No.
You might be able to.
You can from an instance of getting that application in.
Correct. Yeah. I'm saying from a long-term perspective, you're not going to hide a pet.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but then it's one of those things where it just becomes a pain in the ass. They're in there for 3 months. You go to your first inspection, and now all of a sudden they've got a cat or a dog or whatever. And
so I'll hit them. So if somebody has a cat or a dog, I'll hit them with a pet fee of $400, and then I'm going to hit them with a late fee for every month that they had a pet. So they're going to get like a $750 charge. I'm like, all right, well, any damage that the pet causes, we're going to be able to fix this typically.
Yeah.
So then if they don't like it, then they're late, then I can evict them.
There you go. Take
your pick. So it's a slippery slope we manage here in property management. So that's about all I had. And I had, 3 or 4 of the little ones. Obviously the biggest ones, we go to credit reports, we go to references, things like that. We go to income, obviously, short income, for us, it's about 3 times the rent. I typically like to have at least 3.5 times the rent. Credit, if you can get me somewhere close to 600, depending on the property, because every property is a little bit different. So on your low end, I'll take a 580 on a lot of places, because here's the deal. If you can get qualified for an FHA loan with a 580,
yeah,
I certainly should be able to rent a property to you. Right? Now, if you got something worse than that, then we're probably going to need to have a talk, or I'm going to need an elevated deposit or some other kind of, reparations for that. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So anything else to add to that?
No, that was it. I have a handful of little ones kind of along the same lines. They all kind of piggyback what we've already touched on, so we don't need to dive into them. But yeah, no, I think that was a good list for those self-managing landlords.
It's the little tricks that you forget about. It's the cash. If you're getting cash from someone, like, have you ever heard of what a marked bill is? So those exist, by the way. So even in every city in America, they exist. I promise you. So if I was dealing with, luxury rental property in Miami, I'd probably see a lot more cash and be like, oh, God, that'd be terrible. Let's say cocaine cowboys, right?
You're paying double the rent for what reason?
Yeah. Why are you paying a year in advance? Oh, you want to get – and you're paying a year in advance on a $5,000 rental property a month? Yeah. What? Yeah.
How does that – a bonus not to come by and do inspections? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. And you're tipping me. Huh. Yeah. Interesting.
All right. We'll see you in a year.
Yeah. Okay.
Enjoy the property.
Enjoy the property. You know what?
And I wonder how
the sad part is
down in an area like that are.
I guarantee you that happens. Guaranteed. Because a property manager, even if you're managing a luxury property, I guarantee you that stuff happens, because property managers don't make that much money.
Yeah.
Sorry. They're gonna be like, I would be paid off by a drug kingpin in a heartbeat. And I wouldn't ask
the easiest crowd to pay off here would be a property manager.
Oh yeah, property manager. Like, these people have FBI officers in their corner, let alone a friggin' property manager. Pretty simple. So, like, or if I had to do an inspection, I'd let them, hey, next week I'm going to do an inspection at this time. Make sure everything's on the up and up. Give them a heads up. It's not like, so interesting. But yeah, that would be, I've never been propositioned that way. So if that ever happens and someone has millions of dollars.
If someone has
millions of dollars, they want to tip me. Yeah.
I was going to say, if somebody has been propositioned that way and is not in property management anymore and wants to discuss it,
call us, because I'd love to have a conversation about that. And once we can put you under a fictitious name, we don't have to put you on video. We can just do the voice. We could
bring them on video and just do like the shadow that they do around.
We could do the shadow thing. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we could do that. Man, that's great. So anyway,
I think that's a good way to end this.
It is. I was gonna say, we can put them with the background back here. We can do whatever we want. But yeah.
I wish I had another.
I need a green screen behind me. That's what I need to do.
I know.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, either way, we will maybe catch you on Friday for a BS episode, perhaps.
We got to catch up on one of those too.
We do.
We're coming in late on this. This is a Wednesday episode here.
This is. Yeah, we had technical difficulties yesterday with a hurricane. Yeah, it's shit's just getting crazy.
We're on what? We're on episode 30?
I couldn't tell you. 32? I don't know. Somewhere in there. Anyway, I got to get running, man. It was good to talk to you. I'm apparently over here in the Golden Gate Bridge. We're going to go ahead and cross this and go find some property.
All right, man.
By the way, this is Canada. That's the Golden Gate Bridge. And this is me.
Who would have thought? We're lucky.
We're lucky people. Lucky people. If anybody really wants to know where I'll poke my head outside, and I can be on University Boulevard in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a lovely place.
Looks similar to what's right behind you.
Pretty much, yeah. All right, man. I'm going to start the outro. We'll see you.
Hey, take it easy.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, there's a few things I'd like you to do. Subscribe, leave a review, and head over to nobsrealestatepodcast.com, where you can connect with Matt and I on all of the platforms we're on. Also, if you could do us a favor, leave a message letting us know what you enjoyed about the episode and what you'd like to hear about going forward.
Publish this bitch.